Hello, welcome back to Dents and Dings. It's been a while. Uh, been a busy past few weeks, and I haven't been able to upload anything or even really record anything. But one of the things I did during the 3 week long break, I got a new car. Well, new to me, anyways, and that's right here. This is a 1979 MGB. For those of you who don't know, an MG is a British car manufacturer, or was a British car manufacturer. I think they're owned by some Chinese company now, and they still make cars, but they don't make these anymore. They stopped making the MGB in 1980, 81. It depends on who you ask. Anyways, so they started production in 62, I believe, and those originally would have had chrome bumpers and whatever. So they had like an 18-year long run. So they've been around for a while. I managed to get my hands on one, and I like these things. I mean, I've wanted one for a long time, and well, I'm fortunate enough that these are cheap cars. I got this for around 2,800. I overpaid. More on that later, but I think it's in really good shape, and I'll walk you around here. So right here you have a little bit of door, there's a bit of rust on the door there, and well, I put that tape on there just to cover it up, to prevent further rust, which it probably will just make more. I don't know. I plan on fixing it eventually. I don't know whether I buy a new door skin, replacement door, or just try to patch it, but it'll be difficult because even if I replace the door skin, that bottom corner is still, it's completely missing. I just have it patched with, I have a piece of cardboard I cut out and then covered in duct tape. Let's see. So I've made a few modifications already. For one, the door mirrors. Don't look too hard at those for now. There'll be another episode detailing that later. But this didn't have door mirrors when I first got it. So I'm assuming that it had some work done. It did have work done previously. I believe the original color of the car was actually yellow. Repainted white, obviously, for some reason. And when they did the bodywork, they deleted the door mirrors, or the side mirrors. So I had to add those just to make the thing legal. Well, yeah. I don't know what else to say about that. So we'll just walk around. Actually, well, yeah, we'll do a quick walk around, and I'll also take the top down in a moment. I won't bother showing that process. It takes a couple minutes, but then you can see it with the top down, because of course it's a convertible. This, the British sports car roadster, so that's kind of the whole appeal, I plan to use it as a sort of daily driver, which I know a lot of people are probably going to have issues with that. I mean, if anyone actually sees this, of course, but I mean, I needed a new car. My Cadillac is in really bad shape. There's just a lot of issues. I'd say some bigger ones, but there aren't a lot of huge issues with it. It's just so many minor issues that sort of compound and build up, and so many minor issues that the thing's nearly undrivable. That's the gist of it. So this is my solution. I get a car that I really want. And yeah, it's a fun little car. It's not fast by any means, at least by modern standards. It's 4-speed. It doesn't have the fancy overdrive transmission that these sometimes come with. Manual, of course, because why would you get a sports car in automatic? So another thing I've done is the taillights. I've replaced the bulbs in them with LEDs because the originals were just awful. Like, so dim, you could barely see them in the day, let alone at night. I mean, well, I should have flipped that around. You could barely see them at night, let alone in the day. But now that they're LEDs, you can see them clear as day in the day. So they're great to have. Replaced. What else? So we'll just keep walking around. I don't know. So one thing I'll need to do then is this side looks much nicer, I will say. Much less rust on this side. And a good thing about this car is that it has very minimal rust. The worst of it is on that driver's side door, like I mentioned, which isn't like a structural thing, which is great because these are unibody construction, or monocoque, or however they call it. And so if the frame's rusted, then you kind of have to do a complete overhaul, which sucks. And not into that. So this is in really good shape, actually. Again, I had to install the mirror on this side, but don't look at that. You'll see it. You'll see it later, okay? Okay, in another episode. What was I saying about this side? Nothing really. Okay, well, we'll just keep going. Anything other special? Rear wheel drive, of course, because it's an old car. Sports car. Rear wheel drive. It lets you do donuts and things, you know? What else more? Well, let me just take the top down real quick and we can take a better look, especially on the inside of the car too, because that's another feature. Well, the interior of the car looks great. Another thing I do want to mention though before then is that I had mentioned that I overpaid for it, and it's kind of true. I made it back. I drove out all the way to Indiana for the thing, and that was about a 600-mile drive, and it was a bit longer getting back just because we had to take we kept away from interstates, so mostly just highways on the way home, and but it made it. It made it. It just it idles a bit rough, and part of that's because of a distributor that's been replaced. It doesn't have the original vacuum advanced distributor in it. It's been replaced by a dual point distributor for some reason. And well, I'll get into the engine bay and I'll talk more about that stuff later. For now, I'll take the top down and I'll show you a bit more of it. Okay, so here's how she looks with the top down. I've pre-popped the hood, so just ignore that. I'll show you the engine bay soon. But, yeah, she's really nice with the top down. Her top was in rough shape. I don't know if you noticed when I was walking around before. There are a few cracks in the rear plastic window. By cracks, I mean tears or holes. Anyways, for now, I think I'll just fix them up with some clear tape, packaging tape or something, and then possibly possibly buy a new top further down the road. But for now, I just kind of need it to get by. I don't need it to be anything special. Again, ignore the mirrors. They're not there yet for you. And I didn't put there is a cover for putting over here so you don't see all that mess, but I didn't bother with that since I only did this quick for the video. But, yes, the interior is really nice. Again, ignore my junk that's down there. I think the carpet's been replaced at some point, and this is the extent of the seat damage, essentially. Just the headrest on the driver's side. And there is a small tear down here, but it's not too bad. And the seats are very comfortable. All 600 miles or plus that I drove home, they were just fine. I didn't get too uncomfortable. I mean, small car, of course, and I'm above average in height, 5'11". It's not anything really special, but I mean, I'm still on the larger side, so fitting in there, it wasn't terrible. We stopped about every 100 miles to get gas or whatever, and with gas, we're also getting around 30 to the gallon with this thing, which is great. a little surprising too, considering how it sounds when it runs. It's not the greatest sounding engine, but we'll probably touch on that. That could be part distributor, part seals, something, I don't know. There's a bit of compression issue. We did check that. The first and fourth cylinders, they are a bit low on compression, but they're still well within range. But they're just inconsistent compared to 2 and 3, which are pretty much the same. They're very similar, and that's really where you want them to be. I mean, but yeah, it was doing about... I was able to get it up to, I think, 65 on the way home. I didn't want to push it too hard, so that's the most I went, the fastest I went. So, I should talk about some of the issues now. I mentioned before the mirrors I had to install. Thankfully, those mirrors, they became, that aren't there, that you don't see. Those mirrors were in the trunk when I bought the car, so they were free, you know. Again, I replaced the taillights with LEDs. We got that fixed up. Another issue is the engine running not so great. The top is a bit rough. Thankfully, not much in the interior really needs to be done. I did need to add a new flasher relay for the hazards. They should be down here. I don't know if you'll be able to see them. Let's see. Yeah, you can see it there. There's one that's kind of just hanging there on top of the other. The bottom one's the blinkers, and the top one's the hazards. So I had to add that hazard relay. That was just a cheap one I found on eBay. I got a pair of them, so I have a spare in the trunk now. The radio, that did have some issues. I installed this. I had an extra laying around, and, so this is aftermarket. I mean, of course it's aftermarket. This has Bluetooth. They didn't have that in 79, as far as I know. Anyways, it did have an older stereo head unit that I also believe was aftermarket, and they match the same brand as the speakers installed. There's one in each door, and there's also 2 back here. I guess when the top's down, well, you're not hearing much other than the wind anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Actually, you can kind of see one. Maybe not. It's a bit too dark, but there's a speaker down here. They're not huge, they're not massive, but they do the job. So, the main issue on the way back, I didn't have any radio. There was a radio, but the wires were chewed through. Specifically, the power wires, you know, the red, yellow, and black ones. The other ones were pretty much fine. The only one set of speaker wires were chewed through. Anyways, that was just a matter of fixing that when I got back. And the radio did work, but the display was not that functional. You couldn't really read what numbers it was saying, so for finding stations and everything. And that would have just, I don't know, that would have annoyed me too much. Plus, a few buttons didn't work on it either. I don't know, it was just an old unit, so I replaced it with this. This was actually a really cheap unit I just got at Walmart. It came with a few speakers back when I bought it, and I used to have this in my YJ, my Jeep, and, well, it's here now. It's great because it doesn't sit very deep in there, so there's plenty of room for the wires behind it. I also 3D printed that cup holder that sits right in front of the shifter. That's about that. Of course, the dimming switch, you know, that night thing on the bottom you flip for high beam, when people have their high beams behind you, or, you know, maybe the headlights are just a bit too bright, especially with how low this thing sits. That switch doesn't work, so you have to manually adjust it or tilt it up and down for the special dimming thing. Also, the speedometer doesn't work. I think I've figured out that the water temperature sensor doesn't work either, or gauge, and the fuel gauge doesn't work either. So, 3 gauges, non-functional. The oil pressure, tachometer, and that amperes gauge, that works. They all work. And, like, the the amperes. I don't know what to call that. Anyways, that gauge has actually been useful for figuring out some of these electrical issues. Another thing you'll see later on is the horn. I fixed that. Well, I replaced the horn, but I don't want to spoil that too much. That'll be a later thing. And thankfully, you can't see that like you're cheating by looking at the mirrors. Oh, wait, that's not there. Anyways. Yeah, good interior. I don't know what this Velcro thing on there is for, but maybe I'll pull that off. 3 wipers, of course. That makes you a bit faster. I don't make the rules. That's just how it works. It also makes your wipers a bit more expensive to replace. What I did was I just bought a pack of 10 universal wiper blade things, and I just trimmed them down to fit those old arms. Anyways, that works. I did notice something, that the window cranks are different on both sides. I think this one is original, and that one's a replacement. Although I'm not entirely sure. Actually, I think it might just be the knob that's been replaced. But anyways, that's not a big deal. They work all the same. So I mentioned the gauge, the hazard, of course. I replaced the hazard switch because I initially thought that was the issue, because I am dummy and didn't look for other possible reasons. Alright. What else? Well, let's just take a look. Yeah, it's a bit dirty in here. I haven't gotten the chance to clean it yet. Okay, that's a lie. I've had plenty of chances to clean it, but I just haven't. What are you gonna do? Anyways, the trunk is surprisingly useful in the thing, though. Let's take a look at that. Ordinarily there would be a tire there, a spare tire, and I have that removed at the moment because the tire is useless. So I need to get that replaced. And right now I just have a bunch of other crap stored in here. But it's surprisingly spacious. It will be less spacious when the spare tire's in there, but for now it's pretty decent. Right. It's got a fancy mechanism thing here. You lift it and then push that in and then it drops. No springs. And we'll see the same situation on the hood, which we'll get to in just a moment. So, I think the biggest part where I got ripped off on this car are the brakes. The brakes, they function. I was able to stop and go all the way home. However, when I got home, I was able to see the actual extent of how the brakes are, their condition. The rear brakes, let's start with those. They're typical drum brakes. The front you have discs, the rear you have drums. They work. Their pads, their shoes I should say, are actually in pretty decent shape. But the actual cylinder in this wheel specifically leaks a little bit. Not a lot, it just leaks. I haven't really noticed it in the reservoir. It hasn't dropped dramatically, but it's still something I want to get done. I have the parts for. I'm just holding off on rebuilding it for now. The main concern are the front brakes. So they work-ish. But the driver's side, well, both sides, their shoes were very worn down. And the driver's side specifically was grinding. There was no pad left on the pad. It was just grinding against the rotor, which is pretty awful. So I replaced the rotors and the brake pads on the front. And then I noticed, as I test drove it, that was not the main concern. I mean, it was definitely a good thing to replace them, but the calipers are in rough shape too. So, they would either have to be rebuilt or at least replaced. And I ended up going for the latter option. I ordered replacements. They're not here yet. I'm going to put them in soon. Hopefully they come in before Friday, because I'm hoping to take the car for the weekend out to a buddy's place. But If I can get that done before then, that'd be great. And I'm hoping it's just a caliper issue. I didn't order new brake lines, which I should have, or, you know, the soft rubber brake lines. I should have done that. I did not. I will eventually, and that could be the real issue, but I don't know. In the trunk when I got the car, there was also a bottle of DOT5 brake fluid. This car, they recommend DOT3 brake fluid. And the main issue there is the DOT5 brake fluid is silicone-based. DOT3 is not silicone-based. I can't remember the exact name of what its base is, but it doesn't get along with silicone very well. It tends to gel up and gunk up things, and I'm betting that's what happened. I'm betting they got mixed and ended up both messing up that other side drum cylinder and also gunking up the calipers. And the main issue is the calipers, they aren't releasing pressure, so they rub constantly. This one specifically, the passenger one, as far as I know, works okay. But this one, it just rubs constantly, and the hub gets really hot. For my test drive, I only took it about 4 miles around the quarter, and yeah, that was just really awful. The first time I test drove it, it was actually smoking. This time, it was just hot. It wasn't smoking, but that could have just been because there was less fluid or oil on the hub to burn off. So I'm hoping that it didn't overheat too much. I did repack the bearings when I had it open, so I'm not too concerned about that. They seem in good shape. But, so, I'm going to install new calipers on there very soon, and I think I'm going to just combine the rotors and that into one episode. I was going to have the rotors with something else, but now that that's another issue, I'll just combine the two, so I don't mind spoiling it now. Anyways, let's take a look at the inside. The brakes are just the biggest thing that I really feel like I got ripped off on. So, yeah, $2,800. You know, maybe that sounds like a bargain, but these cars aren't, well, they're kind of famous for being the, like, cheap classic car you can get into classics with because they're so affordable, or at least to purchase. It's buying parts for them, which, the same thing with any car, it's buying parts that's gonna set you back. But anyways, at least I did kind of score the, this is a 79 MGB, of course. The rubber bumper kind of denotes the later model thing, but these cars would have typically had a Zenith Stromberg single carb, and this instead has a dual, what's the right term? HS4 carburetors. They have the side-mounted float bowls on both carbs, and so that's kind of great because these are from early model MGBs, which were before the whole a bunch of new smog rules and things when they came out. So that's kind of nice to have, at least for the power, you know. But you'll note here there's a vacuum thing with just a vacuum line with a screw through it. That would normally control your vacuum advance on the distributor. And I had mentioned earlier, this distributor does not have vacuum advance. Someone had replaced that at some point with a dual points distributor, which could contribute to how awful it runs currently. But anyways, they did get some nice NGK spark plug cables, so that's nice. Nice of them. I do think I'll eventually replace that with a new distributor, one with vacuum advance, because that's just better to have. I don't know what else to say. And everything else is kind of, as far as I can tell, original. I think there would have been a smog sort of, there was some kind of device on here too to do that, and there should have been like I think a charcoal fuel filter thing. I don't know what. Anyways, that would have been over there. You could see a hose that just kind of ends, and that's been deleted. So nice of them. This car, like I should have mentioned. Again, I bought it in Indiana, and it had been there for about 4 years. And before that, I think it was owned by someone in California. So I don't really quite know how they got away with this desmogging thing or the mirror deletion, but maybe, I mean, California seems to be the most particular about those things, but maybe they have more loopholes for it too. Anyways, oh, I did, another thing, going back to the carbs. Fuel filters, these are just uni air filters that I bought. I just cut them out to fit the size. The old ones were crumbling. But aside from that, these caps, they're for a damper rod inside of the carburetors. They have oil inside of them to work as there's a piston in there too, and they work together as a form of acceleration pump, if you're familiar with that in carburetors. So this one looked a lot like this, except there was a hole in the top, and the damper rod was up here, sticking through the hole. I fixed that on the way back by taping a quarter to the top of it, and that seemed to work. I don't know why it was like that. I'm a bit worried about why it was like that, but not too concerned. For now, I just 3D printed, when I got home, I 3D printed a new cap. I modeled it myself, and I'm going to upload it to the printables soon, but I don't think anyone really has a use for it anyways, but mine seems to be a pretty unique case scenario. So I measured everything from the original cap and just replicated it in 3D modeling software. It's not a perfect match, but I mean, it fits and it holds the damper rod and it works just fine. So yeah, that's about all I have for the carburetors. There's a bit of tape I put on here. That's actually muffler tape, but I put it on there because it was that water hose was rubbing against the float bowl, and of course the float bowl wouldn't have been original, so I had to do something about that so it didn't wear a hole through it. Is there anything else? The washer fluid, that pump was busted, so I have to find a replacement for that. But, you know, for now, I'm not too concerned. If it gets really awful with bugs or something, I can just pull over and wipe off the windscreen. You know, while I mention windscreen, I would normally call it a windshield, and I probably will interchangeably use both terms. People with these British cars are pretty particular about what your terminology is. I'm not quite so picky about it. I don't mind calling it a windshield. This is a hood to me, not a bonnet. This is a soft top to me, not a hood. This is a trunk, not a boot. I don't see any reason to change my terminology. I'm from America. I'm going to use American English. I don't have to use British English when referring to it, just because it's a British car. Anyways, I don't know, maybe some people will argue that, but that's just the way I feel about it. And maybe I will use them interchangeably, but I don't think I'll ever call the roof a hood, because that's, I mean, the hood is the hood, or the bonnet, you know. I'll get them confused if I end up calling that the hood. That the hood. Did I point right? I don't know. So other changes in this thing, other than the carburetors, is, well, first of all, fuel filter here and by the tank. That's nice. A new fuel tank, too, and a new relatively expensive fuel pump. So hopefully that lasts at least a while. Aluminum radiator, that's nice. New electric fan, that's nice. No shroud, that's not as nice. I'll have to figure out something for that. Maybe just make something out of cardboard for now, I don't know. What else more is there to say? Again, that fancy mechanical latch thing for keeping your hood open. You know, just the essentials. No air conditioning, but no air conditioning, so why? You don't need it. You don't need it. You got a vent anyways, even if you had the top up, or you could just unzip the rear window, which is also really great. I did that on most of the way home because, oh boy, that rear window is not clear. Anyways, the heat, as far as I can tell, works. I mentioned the water temperature gauge doesn't work properly, but it did seem to be keeping pretty well cool, so I'm not too concerned at the moment, although that should be a priority. Although I think that's a priority after the speedometer, because the speedometer is pretty essential. At least if I don't want to have to use my phone as a speedometer constantly. And the trip meter especially, because I also don't have a functional fuel gauge for some reason. I believe that's just a wire issue. I'll need to track that down, but without the fuel gauge, I can't, or I of course don't know my level, and without a speedometer, I don't have an odometer or a trip meter, so I can't keep track of how many miles since my last refill, like I would on a motorcycle, or even in my Cadillac, because that thing's fuel gauge doesn't work either. Yeah, I don't know. It's a nice car. It's a great car. I overpaid, but it's a great car. $2,800. I can't be too upset about it because it's a car I've wanted for such a long time. I do wish I was a bit more meticulous in my search, though. Maybe I should have, like, I had a whole bunch of these listed in my my saved list and Facebook Marketplace. Which, yes, I bought this through Marketplace, and it turned out all right, but I shouldn't have clung on to this one so quickly. The issue is I live in the middle of nowhere, and there aren't too many of these here. So I had to drive 600 miles to just about the nearest one. There were closer, but this was in much better shape than those that were 100 miles closer. But yeah, the underside looks great. I've been under there a couple times already, of course, but once this is fixed, that rust situation there, I mean, that's really all it needs. I mean, I do want to repaint it, though. At some point, I'm not a big fan of the white. It looks okay, but I'm not a big fan. If it was the original yellow, maybe I would be more attached to it, but because it's been repainted white, I'm not a big fan. Oh, and speaking of the repaint, when they repainted it, they didn't bother to protect the wires, to make sure their color coding stayed accurate. So, I mean, well, first of all, let's just look at this mess of wires here. Oofta. There's supposed to be a fuse block somewhere around here that holds these 4 fuses. And again, 4 fuses for the entire car. All inline fuses. That's great. I might work on that later, too, just to make them modern. I really want blade-style fuses. I don't like the glass fuses as much. They're cool, but they're just... ugh. They're also a bit of a pain. I'd rather have things on their own separate circuits and things, so it's easier to troubleshoot and everything else. So yeah, like I mentioned, the wires painted over. Yeah, just look at that. That's what it's supposed to be, which you can't really see because it's focusing on my hand. And then they painted it black. They painted the inside of this black. And there's the original yellow. You can see the yellow show up a few spots throughout the car because they didn't use very good paint on the inside. But yeah, the white paint isn't in awful shape. And there are a couple, areas like right here where the rust is kind of iffy. But I think that could clean up, and I could, again, once I eventually get to the point where I'm ready to repaint it, yeah, it should be doable. And I don't know what color I want to paint it yet, or colors, multiple, I don't know. The yellow would have looked pretty cool. The white, it's okay. The yellow would have looked cool. I was also thinking British Racing Green, because British car. But then I might have to start using the correct terminology, and I don't know how I feel about that. I also like the idea of a dual color scheme, or maybe at least to help match the rubber bumpers. The rubber. Okay, that's another thing about terminology. They're not rubber, they're just rubber. They're like a polyurethane coated bumper, and there's a steel reinforcement behind everything. They're just called rubber because they look like rubber, alright? And that's Rosie. Anyways, so yeah, maybe like black paint on the bottom to sort of match that bumper line or something, and then another color up top. I don't know. I haven't decided anything yet, so there's still plenty of time. Yeah. Well, anyways, that's basically it. I don't know how close I am to the camera, but yeah, that's the introduction to my new to me 1979 MGB with some modifications. And I've made some of my own. So just, again, don't look at the mirrors. They're not there. You don't see the mirrors, okay? Anyways, thanks for watching. And sorry again about the long break. I wanted to kind of make these things weekly, but this is also a bit of a hobby. This is a hobby. This is a hobby. All my other things are hobbies. I also have work and other things that need to be done. And when I don't have motivation for my hobbies, then the videos will also fall behind. So, sorry about that, but it's kind of just the way it is. And I'm also going to be pretty busy with other things lately. And I would love to get back to that scooter project, but this is kind of filled up my, hobby work lately. So, that's where we're at. Yeah, thanks for watching Dents and Dings with me, James. All right, goodbye.